Story 1. So this happened yesterday while I was walking my rescue dog, Luna. She's a 4-year-old shepherd mix, super smart and sweet with me, but she's nervous around strangers, especially when there are sudden movements or loud voices. I've been working with a trainer, and she wears a bright red vest that says, "Do not pet," in training every time we go out. We were in a quiet neighborhood park, and Luna was sniffing the grass while we practiced recall. Out of nowhere, I heard a man say, "Go ahead, honey, go pet the dog." And this little girl, maybe around 6 years old, started running straight toward Luna. I immediately said, "Please don't," and stepped in front of Luna. The dad rolled his eyes and said, "She just wants to say hi. She loves dogs." I responded, "I'm sorry, she's not comfortable being touched." He scoffed and said, "You shouldn't bring her out in public if she's aggressive." At this point, Luna was just sitting behind me, calm but tense, with her tail tucked. I told him, "She's not aggressive, she's in training. That's what the vest is for." Then he yelled, "She'll never get better if you don't let people pet her. You're the reason dogs end up mean." Like, what? I literally train her daily and take every possible precaution. I told him, "I'm protecting both your child and my dog. Please leave us alone." He threw his hands up and muttered something like, "Crazy dog people," before walking off while his daughter softly said, "Sorry." The thing is, if my dog had reacted badly, he would have been the first one to demand that she be taken away or put down. People don't realize how dangerous it can be to let kids run up to strange dogs, even friendly ones. Please, for the love of all things canine, teach your children to ask before touching a dog. Story 2. Backstory. Mom started working in a supermarket when I was a baby because her previous work couldn't give her part-time hours after I was born and her maternity time ended. It was good enough hard work, average pay, but really great coworkers and managers. She stayed for many years, eventually working in the in-store cake shop, and got trained to be a manager in the cake shop. When the old cake shop manager left, she was told she would be promoted. So she took over all the duties, writing rotas, schedules, checking stock, filling orders, and sorting them as they came in. Anyone who's read post on this thread probably knows what happened next. They never promoted her. So she took on all those responsibilities, on top of standard prepping, cooking and decorating cakes and pastries, packing it all up, putting it on the shelves and keeping the department clean. She didn't get any extra pay. She was meant to get something like a £3/hour raise and was working close to 60 or 70-hour weeks. For years. I was just a kid, so I never really noticed anything other than, "Oh, Mom's at work." Then things changed. The store manager, Karen, and another manager, Sharon, announced that a new manager was coming in, who would be Mom's direct supervisor. She's like, "Okay, no problem." New guy, Kyle, arrives and starts getting to know everyone. Eventually, all the work starts getting to Mom, and she sees her doctor, who sends her to a therapist, who diagnoses her with stress and anxiety. She also had a lot of physical issues diagnosed, so she's generally not doing great. She starts medications, goes to therapy, and things start to improve. Now I'd like to mention that Mom went above and beyond for her job. She reorganized the entire cake shop fridge, freezer, and kitchen to make things completely organized. She'd do all the monthly rotas about 2-3 months in advance. She helped other departments whenever they needed her. Basically never took a sick day. Well, her health, physical and mental, goes downhill due to some personal stuff, so the doctor signs her off work for stress and anxiety. She tells Sharon, who she's always reported to, who in turn tells Kyle since he's Mom's manager. Technically, they should be the only people in the company who know why Mom was signed off. Everyone else was just told Tina's taking some time off. Well, someone asked Kyle while they're both on the shop floor. Kyle tells her, by shouting it to her. At supermarket rush hour, surrounded by customers. Most of them know Mom personally, so this was a big thing. A woman Mom is friends outside work messaged her, told her the whole thing. Mom was pissed. Anyone who has met my mom knows how pleasant she is, and has never seen her angry. When she got to the store after hearing this, she was fuming. Went straight to Sharon, who was Kyle's manager, and reported the whole thing. Store manager Karen gets involved, while they listen to Mom going off about how her personal business was just shouted across the store her mental illness. She got her doctor to sign her off for even longer, lodged an official work complaint against Kyle, and started planning her revenge. The revenge. Long story short, nothing happened to Kyle. Basically a slap on the wrist. Don't tell people where you can be heard. Not don't tell people about your staff's mental health. Don't get caught. So Mom starts planning her revenge. As I said before, she did the rotas. She already had up to November finished, signed off, and put up on the board, which left December. She came back from her time off for all of a week. Went in on Monday, asked Karen and Sharon if they were sure they wanted to refuse to take proper action. As far as I've found in my working life, what Kyle did was a reason to fire him. Karen won't do anything. Sharon can't go above her. Mom says okay, gets on with her shift. On Friday, she asks again. Same answer. So Mom pulls out her notice, says she's quitting with 2 weeks left. But she's got a lot of holiday time left, which adds up to nearly 3 weeks, so she's done after her shift that day. Karen looks a little startled, but doesn't know all the things Mom does for the company, so accepts the resignation. Big mistake. Later that day, Sharon comes to find Mom, asks her if she's really leaving. Yeah, she is. Sharon knows she can't convince Mom, so she wishes her well and asks if she has anything lined up. She does. She's not stupid. New job starts in a month. When she clocks out, Kyle comes to ask her where the next rota is, since he needs to sign off on it by close of business that night. She smiles, tells him she doesn't work there anymore, and explains that as the manager overseeing the cake shop, it's now his responsibility to create one. His face drops. He stutters as she leaves, never looking back. That's when crap hits the fan. Because guess when she left? 2 weeks before Christmas. For a supermarket cake shop, that's devastating. Nobody had put in new orders. Nobody was organizing the fridges and freezers. Nobody was prepared to suddenly receive 500+ specially ordered desserts for Christmas. The department fell to pieces when the regional manager, who only showed up once a year for inspections, paid a surprise visit, and he was horrified. Everyone blamed Kyle, every single person. Even Sharon admitted that the reason everything went downhill was because of what Kyle did. Then, because of the stress of working with him, Mom quit. Kyle got fired. It took close to 2 years for the cake shop to get back to being half as good as it was when Mom was there, and she started a store-wide walkout, with nearly every experienced worker leaving and getting better jobs elsewhere for more money. And Mom, she's back in good health, at a job that pays roughly $20,000 extra every year and only has to work 40 hours a week. Story 3. This story primarily takes place between me and a crappy neighbor who is a member of my community's HOA. As a bit of background, me and my 3 roommates moved into a housing community that is basically just a bunch of cookie-cutter townhomes. All of these homes have garages that open onto streets that wind through the community. This is important later, with your front door opening to a path on the other side of your house. There are also some free parking spots on the edge of the community where there are no houses. When we first moved in, we quickly found out that parking could be a bit of a pain during the day, especially when people had guests during the weekend. Now my roommates and I admittedly have more cars than the average family, because we usually have to commute for work. We each have one. We try to make parking easier by using the garage, but we all have tons of sporting equipment, so we can usually only get one car in the garage. When all the parking and all the free spots is full, we just park our cars right up against the garage and leave them there during the day or overnight. We'd seen other neighbors do it, and it still left ample room for people driving on the street to get by. Well, one day, the crappy neighbor comes up while my roommates and I are in the garage organizing some stuff and tells us that we can't park there overnight as it's against community rules. Before we had a chance to respond, he added, and if you do it again, I will personally make sure you're towed." His first comment was pretty reasonable. We just moved in and didn't know that rule. But his second comment really just made him sound like a jerk and wasn't necessary. One of my roommates simply responded that we didn't know as we'd just moved in and we wouldn't park there overnight anymore. Well, crappy neighbor, clearly trying to assert his dominance, responded with, "Good. You better not because I'll be watching." Well, from then on we did follow those rules. If we parked in front of our garage during the day, we would make sure to move before we went to sleep. This worked out for a while until one fateful day. One of my roommates stopped by quickly after work to grab some dinner and clothes before heading to his girlfriend's. This was around 7 p.m., so he just parked up against the garage, as it would be quicker than the parking spaces. Plus, it was early enough that he didn't think he'd get towed. Around 8 p.m., he went to head out and his car was gone. Guess who was there though? Crappy neighbor standing right outside. Immediately, he said to my roommates, "Told you you were going to get towed if you parked here again." The crappy neighbor and my roommate argued for a bit before my roommate came back inside and called the car lot. Well, it ends up closed, so he'll have to get his car in the morning. The kicker? They're going to charge him an overnight fee. All in all, it comes out to $500, which isn't a small amount of money for us. This neighbor has been a jerk to us since we moved in, and even though it wasn't my car that was towed, I took this personally. To make sure we didn't get towed again, we decided to read the community rules, and lo and behold, we found out that the street in front of the garage is actually considered a fire lane, and no one is supposed to park there at any point during the day. Between the crappy neighbor treating us like crap and the fact that we could get him yelling at his wife every night. Not a big detail to the story, but just wanted to say to add to my point that this guy just sucked. I start to plan my revenge. Since quarantine started, I've been able to work from home and my desk conveniently looks out onto the street between the houses. This means that I can clearly see crappy neighbor's garage. I start to take notice of when he parks his car out in front of his garage. For about 2 weeks, I noticed that he would come home around 1 p.m. and leave again at 2 p.m. In the third week, I decided I would begin the revenge. On Monday, true to his schedule, he stopped by around 1. After about 10 minutes, I gave the tow company a call and said that he was parked in the fire lane and if they could come and remove his car. 20 minutes later, a tow truck rolled up, hooked his car up, and towed it off. About 15 minutes later, the crappy neighbor came out, and I could hear him start to yell back into his house, presumably at his wife. He then left and didn't come back until later that evening after he'd gotten his car. Now it was funny to do this, and I made sure to send snaps to my roommates who don't work from home. But I wasn't done yet. See, this jerk apparently didn't learn the first time because literally the next day he parks in front of his garage again. What do? Well, the exact same thing as the day before, of course. Again, the crappy neighbor comes out, realizes his car is gone, yells at his wife, and then goes to get it. Now, after this time, he is a bit smarter and parks in an actual spot before going in to get his lunch or whatever it is he does there midday. He does this for about 2 weeks before he decides that it's okay to park in front of his garage again. Well, who is still sitting at their desk every day and notices this immediately? Well, me, of course. And being the concerned resident that I am, I immediately call the tow company and off his car goes again. And again, this is met with yelling. After this third time, I decided I would stop because I genuinely felt bad for his wife, who he seemed to do most of the yelling at, as if it was her fault that he was a dummy. What I can tell you is that it definitely cost him over $1K. If he hadn't gotten my roommate's car towed, then we wouldn't have ever found that fun little rule. The best part was that a number of my neighbors would have their cars parked there at the same time, and they'd never have their cars towed, which made it all the better when his car was. Story 4. I'm pissed and tired. I'm so tired. I was painting in my backyard, minding my own business, when I saw Tommy coming up from the side of my house. For the people who have not followed my stories, I have a restraining order on this man. I was scared, but I was trying to play it cool, because my dog, like the little exhibitionist that he is, went up to Tommy and asked for pats. I asked him why he was here, and he said he was here to talk to me. He started patting my dog. Screw this, KK Slider. Stop acting like an attention brat and pick up on the situation and protect me, with a smile on his face. I recognized that smile. That is the smile he has when he is about to do something screwed, and he was staring at my dog. Heck no, I don't care about my life, but I live for a few things, and one of those things is my dog. I'm proud of myself for this one, because it was really smart for someone like me. I remembered that Tommy likes planets, and I was painting planets, so I went up to him and showed him the picture. Tommy switched his attention to the painting and took a pic from my hands. Then I sprayed spray paint into his freaking eyes, grabbed my dog, and ran in the house. I told my mom to call the cops. Tommy was banging on the door asking for me, but like the chicken Tommy is, he started screaming when my 6'4" black brother came out double welding a baseball bat and a samurai sword. Tommy got his butt kicked. The cops put him in the paddy wagon and checked the security cameras. Thanks, boss man. And one of them asked if the spray was me trying to protect myself, and I said no, and that I only did to protect my dog. They then asked, does Tommy have a history of being violent towards animals? I said no, I only did it because of his smile. They asked what I meant, and I was honest. I told them everything. All the crap that Tommy did and got away with because of his autism. Grandma, if you're reading this, I'm sorry, but I am done pretending that your grandson is not mentally disturbed. Tommy had that smile when he locked us in his brother's room. Tommy had that smile when he cornered me and tried to kiss me. Tommy had that smile when he and his mom cornered me at a coffee shop and wanted me to date him instead of his brother. Tommy had that smile when he slid a copy of screenshots conversations of his brother and me and told me if I didn't date him, he would show my Muslim Christian mother all the things that me and his brother got up to. And Tommy had that damn smile when his mother defended him after he made a lie about my boss harassing me. Yes, that happened, and it still pisses me off. And that's just some of the crap that he did to me. And it wasn't just to me. His own brother and his family got tommed. I was crying while I was saying this, and if they didn't believe me, they could have asked my boss, his children, his nephews and nieces. I'm done. I'm done keeping my mouth shut just to keep the peace. I'm so tired. Tommy was once my friend, but now I'm not safe in my own backyard. I am done. Update. They just arrested Tommy after all the investigations. Story 5. In high school, I developed an interest in journalism after taking it as an elective with the super cool newspaper and yearbook sponsor Mrs. Wolf *. She was such a strong and cool lady who encouraged my writing and wanted me on the newspaper staff as soon as possible, but I couldn't make room for it in my sophomore spring semester. I applied for the staff the next year, but unfortunately, she had resigned in protest after the school administration decided to censor the paper. I had to fight the new sponsor, my guidance counselor, and a vice principal to get on staff without Mrs. Wolf there to recommend me. I really wanted to be a writer. We had this new sponsor, Mrs. Boxwood *, who was an alumni from 10-11 years before my class or so. She had worked on the yearbook staff, so she was coming back to what she had loved most about her high school experience. That led to a lot of animosity between the yearbook and newspaper staffs because of her blatant favoritism toward yearbook. At some point during my 2 years on staff, I made friends with an underclassman on staff named Shori *, who was a budding weirdo, and I took her under my wing, sharing mixtapes and rock mags with her. She had a lot of problems at home, and she ran away a few times, some of which I helped facilitate, before her family slammed her in a mental hospital, and she came back out like a robot with preppy clothes, blonde highlights, and blank doll eyes. To this day, I am not 100% sure why Boxwood made it her mission to bully and humiliate Shari every chance she got. But Shari was easily and obviously the most vulnerable student in the room, and Boxwood needed someone to roll her crap downhill to. After berating the entire staff for half the class period over perceived misdeeds, for example, hearing us roasting the yearbook staff, Boxwood would single Shari out for ridicule, punishment, and humiliation. Zero instruction or mentorship, just chewing us out, over and over again. The part that made my heart hard as heck toward this adult woman was this. Our computer lab was enclosed completely in glass, and Boxwood would take Shari in there and berate her in full view of all of us for 30 minutes at a time. We had no idea what she was saying. A few times, my classmates held me down in my seat when I tried to intervene. We watched her beat that girl down day after day after day. At the same time, Boxwood was unraveling too. After a while, if she even acknowledged us at the beginning of the class or after school work periods, that was about the most we got out of her. She'd check out at her desk for hours, or just put her head down and sob silently the entire time. We knew her husband was a cop. He finished clown cop school in the 2 years she was our teacher, so he was just a rookie. I suggested to my classmates that she was likely having marital issues with her husband. I really didn't know. Maybe there was a death in the family. We never asked, and I didn't let any of the soft hearts offer her any kind of consolation or compassion. So I bided my time because I didn't have a good reputation with the administration, as most of them knew me by name, and my discipline record was longer than I was tall. I knew the opportunity to strike hard and strike fast would present itself eventually. Lo and behold, my senior year I ended up with a full-ride scholarship to a state university and a bunch of national academic awards which were announced to the entire school, and I became a freaking golden child to the administration. Surprise! Underneath my band shirts and anger problems and smirking disdain for authority, I was a smart kid with a bright future. When I was sent to the office, they'd ask me my opinion of the teacher who wrote me up and treat me as if I was just some aw-shucks rascally kid, as opposed to open disgust on their faces for the crappy delinquent with endless detentions and in-school suspensions for various petty infractions. Lo and freaking behold. I also applied for editor of the paper my senior year and was denied because someone else had a semester more seniority than I did. Instead, I was offered a brand new position created just for me, which entailed me running all the advertising programs and coordinating other operations and funding for the paper. I was focusing more on marketing and advertising as my college major and had won a slew of awards at a major university's summer journalism workshop, so I was okay with it at first. I still ended up proofing and editing most people's articles and mentoring the new staff because I was that good. I worked hard at my consolation prize position and crushed it. However, because I was running the ad program, I decided that I wasn't going to sell ads for the paper as required of all staff members. Cold calling and outside sales are still two things I hate more than anything. My refusal to sell ads led to a number of confrontations between myself, Boxwood, and the editor, which culminated in me screaming my resignation in their faces. Prior to my "go screw yourselves" resignation, Boxwood had me, as a minor child without parental consent, sign what she felt was a binding contract saying that if I didn't meet my ad sales quotas per publication, I forfeited my Letterman jacket, which I had already earned the previous year. She had it in her possession and flat out refused to give it to me. After I resigned, I went to the vice principal over the journalism literary extracurricular program to file a complaint against Boxwood and demand the release of my Letterman jacket. The vice principal dismissed me, saying I needed to provide him with a letter detailing my grievances, as he didn't want to hear a bunch of crap about how she did this and she did that. I spent a week putting together a 7-page single-spaced typed letter that began, "Vice principal didn't want to hear a bunch of crap about she did this, and she did that, so I guess I can't talk about how Mrs. Boxwood." With every freaking thing that witch had said or done, I showed it to my grandmother when I was finished, and God bless that freaking hateful old battle axe who made my life a living hell until she died. She took up my standard and went to war against that worms for brains witch of a human. My grandmother Nonna Mary Asterisk made dozens of copies of my letter along with all my academic achievements, the crappy contract, my awards from the university workshop, and an award certificate which Boxwood asked me to create as the staff graphic designer to hand out at the previous year-end staff party, of which I received one. Most creative newspaper staff with her signature and a hand-drawn smiley face on it. That dumb witch Boxwood literally did not believe that I would come for her to rain hellfire down upon her, and left a paper trail a mile wide. Nana Mary, the tiny witch whose demon blood also surges through my veins, personally delivered packets containing my letter and awards to the principal, the vice principals, and every member of the school board. She even had the receptionist at the school board offices outraged on my behalf. It didn't hurt that I was also graduating with more honors credits than the valedictorian directly into a university honors program, while taking for credit courses at a community college my entire senior year. And knowing my Nana Mary, she probably barged into their offices unannounced and ran right up their bewildered selves demanding to know who this box-face woman was and why the hell they weren't protecting her granddaughter from her crap. She actually called her box-face, and no one corrected her because Nana Mary was a little old lady who also brought cake and donuts when she wanted something from somebody. A couple weeks later, I was called to the principal's office where the principal personally apologized to me for what Boxwood had done to me and put my Letterman jacket on me herself. I asked if she had invited Boxwood to come congratulate me and tell me how nice I looked in my jacket's striking poses with a big smirk on my face, and the principal gave me this "don't push your luck" look. York Nana Mary was there too, demanding that woman Boxface, whatever her name is, not be a coward and come apologize to me. I don't know what happened to Boxface immediately after I graduated, and I never cared to ask. She did have my name and photos removed from anything related to the newspaper in the yearbook. I know Boxface has been teaching in a different city for a very long time. Her husband is still a cop, and she also had a baby which died in infancy a few years after I graduated. I've had other teachers and administrators mysteriously leave their positions after their bullying of me came to light, and Boxface was the last and probably my most epic revenge. I wish I'd nailed more of them because they were out there ruining children's lives day after day, year after year. And for what it's worth, I never wore that stupid jacket and ended up throwing it in the trash. Story 6. Let me start off with a backstory. I come from a long line of firefighters, and so when a few fire trucks from the fire company, the men in my company used to volunteer at, came up for sale, my grandfather bought them and fixed them up. However, my grandpa had a townhouse and only had just enough room to park them in his backyard, but not enough land to build a building to store them. When my dad bought his property with a few acres, it was decided that a barn would be built to store the fire trucks on my dad's property. This property didn't have a house and used to be designated as farmland. Now we get into the story. When my dad wanted to build a house in this little bit of woods right off of a new neighborhood, on land he bought, he had to get the government to rezone it to be residential. This isn't that difficult, just holding a court session to make sure nobody has any legitimate objections to the procedure. However, for some reason, one more neighbor was just too much for a decent chunk of the existing neighborhood, so a bunch of them came up with every dumb reason as to why that land had to be left alone. The woman who will feature prominently later in this story, and we'll call Mrs. B from now on, suggested that the land would be much better suited for horses to frolic in. Nobody in the neighborhood knew of anybody in the town who owned horses, and there wasn't enough land for horses to legally be allowed to live upon it. So after about 2 weeks of this and similar nonsense, the court rezoned the land and finally construction of the house began. As soon as the trees were cut down, the fire trucks were moved onto the property where the barn would be built once the house was done. Once all the trees were down, my dad built up a burn pile to dispose of all the wood, and before he did, as well as him being a firefighter himself, called the fire department to let them know what he was doing. And they said it's all right because he was right in the window of land where no permit would be needed, and a big bonfire also wasn't a problem. So he lit it up. Soon Mrs. B comes, strutting the road, phone in hand, yelling at my dad that she's calling the fire department. He tells her he is with the fire department, and in case she's blind, there's 2 fire trucks already on the property just in case. They were antiques, but they'd still get the job down and were ready to. She continues screaming, so Dad gets on the phone and calls the fire department once again, asking if anyone has called to complain about a fire at his property, To which they respond saying no fires had been reported that day at all yet. So Dad hangs up and starts calling Mrs. B the liar that she is, and to go back to her house and quit disturbing us. We have a few more interactions like this over the process of us moving in, but nothing deters us, and so finally a barn is built for the trucks. Eventually things die down in regards to the neighbors, and we make good friends with about half the neighborhood. Now, a year or so after the barn is built, another local fire department my grandpa is involved with is working on selling one of their old trucks. A giant Ford Louisville model, basically a semi-truck with a fire truck body. They don't have the space to store since its replacement has come in, and until they find a buyer, they need a place to store it. So my grandpa offers to store it in our barn. Part of this deal involves us running the truck around once a week, because letting the truck sit too long could cause damage. Well, during this time, Mrs. B starts having a ton of yard sales. We noticed a few people parking on our lawn during this, not like one tire on the grass or something. No, there are people using our yard like it's a parking lot. We always tried to ask people to move because it is our lawn after all. But yet it keeps happening. One day we learn why Mrs. B keeps telling people to park on our lawn. We figure a good solution to this is to put up a sign that's been spray painted to say no parking in big black letters, clearly legible so everyone knows. Our lawn stops being used as a parking lot for a bit. Until one day Mrs. B decided to march on over, rip the sign off its post, rip the post out of the ground. It was all temporary, so it was just temporarily duct taped together and pushed into the ground a little, and proceed to throw into what's left of the woods behind our house. My parents were furious. People began parking in the lawn, the way they used to again the next day. This is when my dad comes up with a genius plan. He puts the sign back up, but he's not done. It's just that time to take the Ford around the neighborhood. My dad has been driving trucks like this since he's had his license, so he knows just how to get it to do what he wants it to. He takes it out, goes up to one end of the neighborhood, turns around, and starts heading back. This truck had a 10-speed manual transmission, and in this half-mile long stretch of road, he got the diesel motor into 8th, waited until just before he reached Mrs. B's house, and by the time he had reached the edge of her property, the truck was in 3rd. Now this truck was diesel-powered, and all that slowing down makes the truck roll some serious coal, with the exhaust pointed straight at the yard sale on a relatively calm day. Needless to say, while nothing looked all that bad, maybe a little darker than before, the worst part was the smell. Diesel fuel stinks really bad when it's been coal rolled. Within a few days, everything left from the yard sale was packed up into garbage bags and was sitting next to her trash can. She might have tried to call the cops, but would the cops even acknowledge her if she told them that her neighbor's fire truck drove by spewing black smoke all over her yard sale items, ruining them? I don't think so. After this, not only did she leave us alone, she stopped having yard sales altogether. So point being, since Mrs. B was horrible to us that whole time we've owned property in the neighborhood, we cost her hundreds, if not thousands of dollars she could have made at that yard sale, and any others she might have had in the future.